Hi friends, I'm Sarah Chapman.
I'm Trent Chapman. We're married.
We are married. We've been married 17 years.
Almost.
We had some rough patches, of course.
Is that what we're starting with?
Yeah, we're just gonna hit the ground running with our challenges. But yeah, we just wanted to share with you a little bit about our story, the challenges we've had in regards to intimacy, and things that have helped to deepen our connection with each other over the last few years. But for me, one of the challenges that I faced in regards to intimacy, sex, growing up in a home where sex wasn't even talked about at all. Yes, I knew that it was something that I was to wait till I was married to be able to do. However, my parents didn't really talk about it in the home.
They didn't portray it as a good thing. They didn't.
Right.
Same with when I grew up, it wasn't really talked about much either. However, I think what we learned growing up did help us because it kept us both from participating in sex as teenagers. So there was a benefit, of course, to that. We weren't doing things in an age when we weren't mature enough to understand the emotions and the outcomes of those actions. So there was benefit from that. But once we were married, then those benefits kind of went away of saying, sex is naughty, don't do that. Even though that's not something actually that's true, that belief kind of helped us to not do that until we were married. But then when we were married, for me, it became easy to say, okay, now it's okay, let's get going. I think most men have that ability to flip that switch, but for Sarah, that wasn't an easy, switch to flip. So it was more of a process to say, no, it's okay to engage in these activities together.
And it was a long process because, once again, it's these beliefs that I created in my head, that it was dirty and nasty and gross, and I had teenage friends who talked about it, and it was like this secret thing they did behind their parents' back. And so I just had all these twisted,
negative
associations with it. And so I'd taken that into marriage. Didn't help at all. And so for the first, 12, 13 years of our marriage, it was like I thought sex was just for him. I didn't have any inkling or belief that it would be good for me. And the crazy thing is that I could climax, I could have orgasm and have that pleasurable experience, but I would immediately feel guilty afterwards, and I'd feel like I was doing something wrong, that I wasn't a good girl anymore. So I had this good girl syndrome, I like to call it, and I didn't think that it was just...
Well, and I think a lot of us come into marriage with different expectations as well, especially from a Christian or LDS background. We grew up believing that sex is sacred, of course, but men also have, so we don't talk about it, and so when we get into marriage, men have this expectation, okay, now it's free reign, and a lot of women come in with, okay, I got to do this thing as part of being married. Some women have a positive experience towards sex and positive attitude towards it, but there's a lot of women that, like Sarah, thought it was just, okay, I have to do this because I'm married now. It's fun occasionally, but I feel like I'm doing something wrong. And so our expectations were definitely different. So that also added to our frustration. And I didn't know how to communicate these things to Sarah, so we went for years of me feeling like she doesn't want me, and her feeling like I got to do this thing for Trent, and it just wasn't a positive experience for us because it felt like we were not connecting through intimacy. We felt like we were always having frustrations and disappointments. And Sarah thought there was something wrong with me because I wanted sex more than her. I thought there was something wrong with her because she didn't want sex.
I didn't want it at all. It was bad. And and not only just in regards to sex, but just communication in marriage, I would just act as if nothing was wrong because I wanted to live this perfect lifestyle in the back of my mind. But I still didn't have those opportunities to actually share any of these hard battles I was facing in my head with my husband. Didn't even come up at all. all.
Yeah, because of that feeling that she couldn't share with me, and I felt like I couldn't share things in my head with her because I didn't want to feel judged by her. That led to a lot of frustration and a lot of feeling like we weren't really compatible, feeling like we weren't, a good couple because of those things. And it kind of hit a point where after almost 12 years of being married, where we were like, why are we married still? If
2013, I remember the year.
why are we still married if we can't figure out how to feel connected and like we're partners, instead of feeling like we have different ideas, different expectations, different goals, but we didn't even know what they were because we weren't communicating very clearly. So I think what really changed though is that we both got to a point where we were at a breaking point of we need to make some changes, otherwise our kids are going to be impacted by a relationship not working out, and we didn't want that. I never thought of divorce as an option. I thought as murder as an option. I'm just kidding.
No. I actually thought of it as an option.
What?
And
I never knew that.
He did too, but
no. So we were at the point where we were both very frustrated, and we had to figure something out. And so we went to a friend of mine was doing a seminar on basically living your best life, and I always thought those were kind of like rah-rah sessions and didn't care for them. But we were at a point where we just wanted to try something new, and
it's kind of a desperate moment.
It helped us to realize that we weren't being authentic with each other. We were hiding from each other because we were worried about being judged or what the other person would think of us, and realized at this point it didn't matter if we were at the point of this may not work out, then we need to do something. So shortly after that, we got to a point where we finally understood some steps to speaking authentically without feeling like we're going to get judged, or without shaming each other for our thoughts and our feelings. And also to the point where we understood that if we came from a place of wanting to understand, then there wouldn't be that fear of judgment from each other. And so that place of curiosity, why is Sarah feeling this way? So instead of reflecting that she doesn't want me or she doesn't like me and going to that judgment space, staying in a space of curiosity. I wonder why she feels that way. Understanding her feelings and her thoughts before trying to make a judgment and then getting upset that I feel like she is judging me or doesn't want me. And so that was a turning point for us, because it allowed us to learn to communicate more authentically and not be fearful of what the other person might think.
Yeah, and it obviously goes vice versa, the same thing. And just being able to get to the point where I actually could express my desire, and it was hard. He would always ask me, what is it that you want? And I'm like, I don't know, because I have never allowed myself to go to that place to know what I truly desired, because if I did even dabble in a little bit, I would shut it down, and I don't, and so
because good girls don't think about sex.
We don't think about sex. And even still now, even though I know a lot of these concepts and know a lot of these things, for me, I really need to be consciously aware and thinking about it even still. But it's a process, and I think that's what you need to understand sometimes for women. We're just a little slower.
And I think the other thing that changed with you was I noticed that you became more confident in yourself as you're learning these new things, and you're doing new things daily, new daily habits to help yourself feel more confident. That my desire to be with you increased, and your desire to be with me increased because of your confidence in yourself. And so I think a lot of times a lack of confidence in ourselves creates this disconnection with our spouse, even though they love us for who we are most of the time. I don't really know many people who say, I don't love my spouse because this and this. They might have things that they're frustrated about, but I love Sarah for who she is, and when she's more confident, I find her to be more sexy and more attractive. And so as she was working on herself and I was working on myself, we found that we were more attracted to each other. So a big part of that was learning that we have to be authentic and willing to be vulnerable. And in order to do that, I had to feel like I was in a safe space with Sarah, that she wasn't going to judge me and she wasn't going to divorce me or hate me. And once we were in that space, it allowed us to continue to grow and communicate until we felt more confident with each other.
Right. And I think taking responsibility for those actions of things that that would come up, because I always in my mind I'm like, I'm gonna fix my husband, in the early years of my marriage,
what's wrong with me?
I'll fix him, But it really does, when I finally learned, like, okay, I can't change him, but I can change myself, like, and work on myself. It's been interesting, like, how that dynamic has totally shifted, and, like, I've realized, like, how much power I can have in just working on myself, and then that reflects to him, like, oh, like, look at her, she's like being more conscious and aware of like making adjustments and changes, and allows him to like look at himself and be like, oh, maybe I can work on a thing here too, or whatever, you know. And yeah, I think
the other thing I think is a really common issue with husband and wife relationship is men and women usually feel and act different in different situations. So it's not like I'm trying to understand her and I'm trying to come from my position to understand her, and she's trying to understand me, but she's coming from her head and her position trying to understand me, and we were both confused. And so once I understood her love languages, and if you've read the books by Gary Chapman, he's an author not related to us, he talks about how different love languages receive love in different ways. So for me, physical touch is very high on my love language list. So for Sarah to initiate sex with me shows me that she loves me.
Touch him.
And then she comes home, and when I come home from work, she kisses me, hugs me. Those are ways that I feel like she's showing appreciation, and I feel wanted by her. And for Sarah, I didn't realize this until years later. When I serve her, take care of the dishes, help with the laundry, play with the kids, and do these things, that gets her going more than
he gets his little star
me
in his
kissing
chart.
her.
For sure, a star on the chart.
And so once we understood that, we communicate with each other. Here's what makes me, want you more. Then I knew, okay, there's some processes and steps I can take to help Sarah feel more like she wants to connect with me in a way. And this isn't to manipulate her. In a way, I guess it is, but we do it because I want to connect with her and show her I love her. And instead of like, approaching her and touching her and kissing her, feeling like I'm showing love, because that's the way I receive love, she's not feeling it. And so I was not doing what I was intending to do, and she felt like, why are you always pressuring me for sex? Yeah. And so once we understood that helped us also to communicate, here's how I feel loved, and if we can work on doing this, I feel loved, and then I understand how you feel loved, and I'll work on improving in that way. So I think that's been a really important part of our relationship, is understanding how we receive love, and not trying to show my love to her the way I receive love, but show it the way she likes to receive love.
So yeah, we learned all these things, and have been working on it, of course, especially since 2013 when I wanted to divorce him. It's hard to think about, but it was true. Like, sometimes you get to the bottom of the barrel and you're just like, I gotta get out of here. Not get out of the marriage, but like, I need to fix something. So, but I felt like during that period of time, like I was still kind of working on I felt like I had everything else figured out for me, like physically, mentally, spiritually, and all these things. But I had sex like up in this corner, and intimacy, and I just couldn't get a grasp on it. And last year, I was given permission from a friend. We had a really deep conversation, and she really she basically had a similar story and path as me. And she's like, Sarah, like, I think really what worked for me and really changed everything for me was I actually opened up books. I educated myself, because I know like education is very important, personal development. That's what I really enjoy reading, but I would never allow myself to open up a book on sexuality or anatomy or anything. But she's like, Sarah, trust me. And so I did. And I kind of was at this breaking point. I was frustrated, and I'm like, why haven't I figured this out? And I considered sex a struggle for me. And I was just like, I've had enough. I'm done fighting with this struggle in my head and my mind. So I finally just opened up one, and she helped. She was like my accountability partner. And she was like, so how'd it go? Like, how's it going? Like, so anyway, since last year, 2017, I've read, 20 plus books on sexuality. I've learned a lot about my body and anatomy of my body. And I think that's just her giving me permission to do that, like, has opened a whole, like, it's like a floodgate of, like, this curiosity and this interest of really wanting to understand my body and see how it works and how it works within a marriage and within intimacy. And I'm so grateful that I did. And so that's part of the reason why we're sharing this.
The other thing that she helped you understand was that sex isn't just for me.
Right.
And so when Sarah understood and believed that sex was for her pleasure as well, that it was not a bad thing for her to experience that. Even though she did it frequently, she did, climax frequently, it wasn't a problem. She didn't do it because she wanted to. She did it because we were in the act, and then she would go, okay, now we're doing it, I'll go ahead.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like she was wanting that. And now she's at the point where I truly feel like I'm wanted by Sarah. And I don't know if we went over that earlier, but